So it's a huge issue, and it's been something that many folks have been working on for quite a few years, and there's a lot of hope that this might be the year that that it passes. So, but you know, and then there are some folks within the Department of Health that are certainly allies and have spoken out against this practice. So there is, you know, I don't want to demonize all of the Department of Health, but there are, you know, it's definitely a huge issue, and very much the intersection of criminalization and public health. That's a huge issue.
I just kind of made this one up, I'm just curious. So a couple of you mentioned working in pornography. What do you see as like the differences between other types of sex work, especially prostitution and pornography, considering that pornography is legal and prostitution is not? I guess how society treats you. I mean, from saying that you work in pornography or sex work, do you ever get different reactions or?
I mean, I guess that my experience working in porn is more just that it's harder to get the gigs, really. I mean, because you have to persuade a director that it's worthwhile and marketable to have you in their work. Also, honestly, financially, it's often not worth it. I mean, with a client, you see them once, you do one session, and you get paid for that one session. With porn, you're getting paid for that one session, and you're getting paid slightly more, but then you're not getting paid anything on distribution. You're not getting paid anything for, like, you're not getting royalties or anything further down the line. That's it. You just get paid a one-off fee. So it's not necessarily worthwhile in the long run. I think that, yeah, the stigma is slightly different, but not by much. There's definitely a lot of the same issues. Like if I went to one group of people and I said, oh, I do pornography, people would be like, oh, and you would have the questions about, oh, aren't you worried about STIs, and oh, do you have to fuck really ugly people, and like, you know, oh, aren't you worried about being naked on the internet? And I mean, that's the same questions I get about being a sex worker or being a prostitute. So like, it's not really any different. You know, personally, I would say it's really 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah, I think that the stigma is definitely different. I almost, though, have found, I mean, they both have their pros and cons. I do kind of feel like prostitution is harder, though. It's almost like so much more intimate and personal, and it's just so different, I guess, on an intimate and emotional level. But on top of that, I think that it almost, for me, felt more degrading in a way. It's like, when you tell people, I mean, I don't tell many people this, like I do tell people I dance, and I can even just tell that reaction. So it's like when I tell people, oh yeah, I've been paid to have sex, it's almost like, whoa, you're a slut. Like, or pretty much that's an immediate thought, I'm sure, what I feel. But yeah, I just think almost prostitution is just harder, almost more degrading. I think like pimps today is like, I just think it's so bad, almost hurting women a lot. Because it's almost like controlling in a way, if that makes sense. But yeah, definitely the stigma, definitely like the emotional level is so different. So it's what I think.
I think that definitely one of the differences that I witness is, and I think looking at the queer community in particular is a really interesting way to see this in regards to the stigma. There's definitely this sort of almost an idolization of people who are involved with queer pornography. I mean, lots of queer people are obsessed with things like Crash Pad and people like Courtney Trouble and James Darling and Buck Angel, and view these people as important heroes of the community, and important people involved with the queer community. And I mean, I don't know of a single queer escort or queer full-service sex worker, which is another word for a prostitute, who has that same sort of reputation, because of the nature of, I think, the mediums. The full-service sex work is very much more individualized and mano a mano, whereas pornography is it's a media production, it's an erotic production, as much as writing an erotic novel or anything of that sort of nature.
I have a follow-up question on that. I can just talk really loud. So before we were talking about policy and like loopholes in policy regarding to how illegal sex work is treated, and I was wondering if you guys could touch on the difference between policy of illegal sex work and amateur porn, because it seems like to me, it seems like a really fine line where you and your boyfriend or you and your partner can make an amateur porn and somehow that is different than sex work. And when it's really, they're both not really institutionalized, and they just seem very similar to me, and yet the way in which the legal system views them is very different. So I was wondering if you guys could touch on that.
There's nothing illegal about filming yourself engaging in a sexual act. It really is an issue when it's not on screen and there's an exchange of resources, so money, drugs, housing. If there's any proof of that, is when you come into a legality issue. But as far as someone creating or making amateur pornography or filming themselves, there's not anything legal about that. I mean, I think it's a little bit different with some of the amateur porn studios that kind of market amateur pornography, but I don't think that there's any legal issue or concerns around there'll be concerns around distribution of videos and who you're distributing the video to and whatnot. But as far as actually making a film of two adults consensually engaging in a sex act, it's not illegal to do that.
I think one thing that's really interesting is that at least I've seen, in particular with celebrities, when amateur videos that they have shot, their sex videos or whatever, usually they're leaking it on purpose just to desperately seek more fame or become famous. But there have been cases where they have filed suit against somebody. For distributing the videos for defamation of character or other similar suits. And that's really interesting to me, because one of the things Red Umbrella Projects is trying to work on right now is having media stop publishing pictures of sex workers who have been arrested, particularly in sting operations. So there's definitely a difference where if you aren't identified as a sex worker, then your sex life is private. But if you are a sex worker, then your sex life is open to anybody. And I'm including in regards to that, if a strip club, for example, is busted for having full-service sex workers working in the strip club, there are going to be photographs of everybody, not just the people who are doing the full-service sex work.
Well, and the clients as well.
Yes.
And so you have situations where giant billboards are made of clients of sex workers. which really is just awful. I mean, anyway, so on pornography, what I find really interesting, what makes it legal, if I get this right, I believe, is that it's that someone else who is not involved in the sex is paying you. So I believe that you could, in theory, be having sex with your partner and filming it, and like, for example, be doing it on a webcam, and someone else could be paying you. And that's totally legal as well, for example. Or, you know, amateur porn studios, you know, they're not engaging in the sex. Though interestingly, because they're amateur porn studios, sometimes they are engaging in the sex. So sometimes they get around that by paying you before, or paying you later, or having the intern pay you instead. You know, there's, again, loopholes to all of this. Granted, again, I think that generally these studios are so small that no one really cares. Yeah, I'm actually, when I get back to California, I'm about to do my first mainstream porn. And I was laughing because the people who referred me to the director doing this porn were like, oh, yeah, don't be nervous. He's exactly like seeing a client. He's like totally like seeing a trick. He's just, you know, got a porn site, so it's totally legal. And it's like so funny to me that like that's exactly what makes it different, is that he's got a porn site and he's kind of famous for having this porn site. So despite the fact, again, that he's going to be directly paying me because it's a point of view porn site, so he's going to be holding the camera, so he's directly going to be paying me for the sex acts that we're engaging in. It's going to be legal because there's a camera involved and he has a porn site. I don't understand how this works, you know, but like, there you go.
I would just add, I mean, I work a lot with attorneys in New York City, and so does Emma, and attorneys, especially I can think of folks like at the Sex Workers Project, that there's a lot of legal gray areas. So if you are ever concerned that there might be a legal gray area, definitely talk to an attorney. But, you know, and it's not just in terms of filming pornography. There's, you know, dungeons and, you know, kink and BDSM play that within a certain legal confine is legal sex work, as I think folks on the panel have mentioned before. So it's a complicated legal system in terms of how sex is policed and criminalized and what's not criminalized. So I always defer to the attorneys and say, hi, so can you look this up for me and let me know whether or not this is legal? But I think in general, like I was saying before, filming yourselves having sex is not illegal.
And just one thing to really add to that is really do see an attorney, because a lot of the time they'll consult you for free just because, since it is a gray issue, lawyers love gray issues. They're all over that stuff. Yeah, they're so into it. That's what gets them going. At the same time, you know, there are definitely other lawyers who really, you know, avoid the issue with a 6-foot pole, and you can usually tell the difference by which lawyers want to go on to do politics later in life.
Another thing, like, I don't know if anyone here has heard of the situation in Paddleboro that happened like a long time ago. I want to say like 2001 or 2002, where a house party, like a kinky house party, was broken up by the police because of a noise complaint, and people got arrested for running a house of prostitution because they took $5 at the door to help pay for like food and drinks. So like that's another example of how sex can be policed. It doesn't even matter if there is actually sex being exchanged for money. It could just be that sex is happening and money was taken at the door for something completely different. Because it's a gray area, that means that the police can decide to interpret it however they want. And that's why they keep it a gray area, because they want to have the ability to do that.
Yeah, and I would just also add, there's all these, like, laws around public sex in general, two consenting adults having sex in Central Park, that it's illegal to have sex in public, right? So, there's a whole definition or legal definition of what's sex in public versus what's sex in private and whatnot. So that also becomes a factor.
What's
Chelsea, why don't we open it up because of time? So
Sounds good.
I just
Anyone have
want to make sure
questions?
people that have questions have time to ask them.
Yeah, but, I guess. No, it's fine, I can just talk, can everyone hear me? Okay, so, I'm in the 505 class that helps put together all these things, and one area that's kind of been an area of contention in like discussions, has been that of what the definition of child pornography or like child prostitution may be. So, for example, a teenager sending a photo of themselves to another teenager, his or her partner, for example, would be considered child pornography. And, there's a huge category of pornography that is teenagers who say they're 18 because that's the youngest age they can say they are, and they have these hairstyles and clothes to make themselves seem younger, and it's definitely, there is a niche market for it. So I'm just, I guess, interested to hear different viewpoints on what you think the definition of child should be, regardless of how it is in the law, and how you see that play out.
Well, for starters, child pornography and child sex trafficking is, I'm not sure, because that particular area is in my specialty, I'm not sure if the portrayal of the extent of it is accurate. But the portrayal of how terrible it is definitely is. It's truly indescribably awful in so many different ways. That being said, in New York City, for example, I think it was New York City or New York State. Okay, so in New York State, all sex work being done with a minor involved is considered trafficking. And where this becomes a problem is, for example, mainstream feminist groups like Equality Now and now New York City have raised oppositions to our No Condoms as Evidence bill because they want to include a clause that says, well, you can use condoms as evidence of prostitution in cases of trafficking. And so basically, although they are coming at this from the very legitimate standpoint of wanting to combat trafficking, they are also essentially taking away condoms from any minor and doing sex work in New York State, which is terrible, of course. And not only, making those minors being afraid to carry condoms, but oftentimes those minors are being trafficked or coerced into doing sex work, and you're giving the people who are doing that to them an excuse for them not to carry condoms and not protect those children. And so it's really just a matter of these children are going through really, really terrible things, and do we really want to make it worse on them by making them vulnerable to STIs?
I think there's what Emma brings up is just issues around age of consent for sexual behavior and ageism in general being a factor in all of that. And I know there's been a lot of conversation around sexting or posting, adolescents posting naked pictures of each other or transmitting it through social media or through their phones. And I think it goes back to the age of consent laws, and if it's to minors, I understand that if it's digitally transmitted in any way, that person with